I'm Tim, the brand weaver, and this is Branding for Breweries, the podcast that helps you grow your brewery, build a better brand, and connect with more drinkers. Each week, I'm joined by the brightest minds in the beer world, sharing practical tips to help your brewery stand out and sell more beer. Let's get stuck in. Good morning, 24-hour party people. 'Tis I, Tim the Brand Weaver, coming from you live and fresh-faced on a Thursday morning. Abstract, bold, daring. I know you're normally here on a Monday, Tim. What the hell are you doing on a Thursday? Well, my friends, I will be at BrFw&x next week, so I've got to get all these chats in early, you see, so you can continue to hear my dulcet tones throughout the week and beyond and not be disappointed with your weekly dose of Tim. Anyway, that's enough of me waxing lyrical about why we're chatting on Thursday. Here we are, Branding for Breweries, the show that brings you the brightest minds from around the beer world to your earballs, eyeballs, and any other balls you want it brought to help your brewery thrive and do incredible things. And today is no exception. Now, I always say it's no exception, but each and every guest that comes on is pretty awesome. So I feel justified in saying this, because today I've got Brian Spencer, and he works for Tap Social. We're going to be talking about Tap because it's a slightly different kind of brewery in the way that it is purpose-driven. Like the show notes say, it's purpose first, beer second. The purpose was established and then everything else built on top. And you see a lot of breweries out there these days kind of going, yeah, we care about the environment or we care about this particular thing, but maybe not all of it feels so baked in and well thought out and authentic as someone such as Tap Social does, in my opinion. Anyway, that is completely more than enough of me running my mouth. Let's get Brian in here. Let's have a chat. Brian, good morning, sir.
Tim, hello. Funny to see you here. How are you today?
What are the chances, eh, my man? How are you doing, buddy? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm good. We're here in a windy yet sunny day in Oxford, so 1 out of 2, we'll take it.
It's a perfect day to fly a kite if you're very popular, the Banks family,
Exactly.
so I'm told. Brian, my man, for those people who don't know about yourself and indeed Tap Social, could we start with maybe a bit of an overview about the brewery and about yourself, please, good sir?
We can. And so first, of course, thank you for having me and for spotlighting Tap Social. It's I've been really looking forward to this, so thank you again. So I am the marketing manager for Tap Social. I've been with the company for going on about 4 years now. So we started in 2016. We're based here in Oxford. I'm speaking to you from our tap room, which is where it all started back in 2016. So as you mentioned in your introduction, we are a purpose-driven brewery. We're a social enterprise. So our whole mission, everything that we are about from day one to current day, is helping people from prison turn their lives around. So how that started and how that manifests. So our co-founders are Amy and Tess, who are sisters, and Amy's partner, who is Paul. They all had backgrounds in criminal justice. Amy was working when Tap Social started before. She was working at the Ministry of Justice. Paul is an independent criminal barrister, and Tess was working in Canada with young people who had prior offenses and helping to get some of those offenses overturned, and again to kind of help them turn their lives around. And so I think what happened, and of course I'm speaking for them, but I think a lot of the work that they were doing with people coming out of prison was at the very end, right? So, and I think that, it became a thing where they saw this repeated cycle of people are coming out and we can't really do much for them at this point. And they wanted to have an intervention, essentially. How can we get involved in this process earlier? How can we make a difference in these people's lives and help them overcome this myriad of challenges that they have coming out of prison? And so that is essentially, without getting into massive detail, that's essentially what the kernel of how Tap Social started, was just to help people turn their lives around and they're getting from coming out of prison, and helping them overcome all those obstacles that a lot of people don't know that they face.
See, that's really interesting to me because, unlike a lot of breweries out there where they go, we want to make a really tasty IPA or something that our friends are going to love, your founders went, this is the problem we want to solve. And I know that when you and I were chatting when we started this, back and forth, that with that purpose, then how did it land on the beer side of things? Because it could have gone in many directions, right? If the whole idea was giving, people who've been through the prison system a foot up when they come out, you could have been a number of things. So why beer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, Tess, to be clear, Tess, Amy, and Paul had zero brewing background, which is always a great, great starting point for starting a brewery, is to have no beer background at all. That's not necessarily completely true. So Tess was working in hospitality in London for a while. I think her last gig before they relocated to Oxford was at Craft Beer Co. And so I think, beer, in particular, independent beer, has a reputation for being, I don't want to say liberal, but maybe open-minded, right? I think that if you support independent beer, and we're talking about craft beer and independent beer and that whole conversation, I think that you tend to have an audience that is open-minded and would be kind of interested in things that are maybe socially focused. And so I think that they decided, look, there's probably to be clear, there's probably two angles to why we chose beer, right? Number one is it's a good audience. So I think that people from beer, this is something that we think that they can get behind. And number two, this is 2016, and when you start a business, obviously it needs to be commercially viable. And so when you look at that growth period in independent beer, craft beer, 2015 to mid 2010s, there's a lot of opportunity, especially in Oxford, where the brewing scene is very nascent, to say the least. And so I think that they just identified Oxford as a forward-thinking community, one that had a hole to fill in terms of beer. And I think that kind of got us on the way. They hired a brewer, Jason, who obviously did have a brewing background.
Thankfully.
Someone who knows what they're doing, right? And he was with us for up until last autumn. And so I think that that's how it got started, and everything kind of went on from there.
It's a very business savvy approach. Like, this is the problem we want to solve. This is the gap where we can fill it, and this is where the audience is. So it makes perfect sense from a business logic side of things. I suppose the thing I want to dive into, Brian, is there are a lot of breweries out there who claim to have some kind of purpose attached to them. I referenced it in the start of the show. You've got a lot of breweries who claim to be who really put their flag in the ground about being eco-conscious and eco-friendly brewing, and there are various other purpose-driven breweries out there.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think Tap has, which makes it such kind of like a grounding fundamental to everything that you do, versus almost like a bolt-on that you kind of see and is occasionally talked about on breweries?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I would preface my answer by saying that doing good in the world is a good thing, right? Especially in these days that are troubled, to say the least. If you have a brewery or any kind of company, and you want to do something that benefits the environment or society, or anything that benefits somebody out there, you should do it. You should definitely do it. I think that it's probably worse not to do something than to do something that is just maybe not a core part of your business. And I know I'm sure you've agreed. But I guess to your question, if you have a mission and it's part of your business, it's something you talk about, it needs to be in the everyday fabric of what you do. So since we started in 2017, and I think that, I would speak very confidently for Amy, Tess, and Paul when I say this, I'm sure that they had no inkling that 10 years later, that they would have created, I think we've created the latest numbers, 112,000 hours of paid, meaningful employment for people from prison. And so everything we do, from our marketing to our selling to our branding, everything that we do goes into that mission. So if you're going to make it a sustainable thing, you need to, this is going to sound so cliche, and I'm sorry, but you need to walk the walk, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can, there's a company, a very well-known brewery that have been in the news lately, and I don't want to step on them any further, but if you talk about a bolt-on, there's an initiative about regenerating a forest, right? And that to me, it sounded great, and I can get behind that, right? We're gonna regenerate a forest, and we're gonna give back and reduce our carbon footprint, and that never really happened. That we're learning now, and there's other troubling, addendums to that story. That's a classic bolt-on, but they tried, right? They tried, and they wanted to do their best. They didn't do it. But for us, everything that we do, and I can tell you this very honestly, goes back into that core mission. I mean, it's our day-to-day at our venues. We have 4 community venues here in Oxfordshire, with a 5th on the way. It's in our brewery. It's in everything. And so I think that if you really want to make your business about a certain cause, you really need to think hard about how you're going to weave that into your story and everything that you do. I really think it has to be something that's legitimate, because if it doesn't pass the sniff test, people aren't stupid. I mean, if they come onto your Instagram or whatever it might be, and they see something that, it's kind of an offhand reference, they know. And that good intention becomes something that kind of makes you look bad, right? And so I think that, it's a fine line between making it everything you do in virtue signaling, but for us, it generally is everything that we're about. So I think that you need to think long and hard about how you incorporate your mission or your cause into essentially your brand story.
I want to loop back on the virtual signaling in a minute, because prior to that, you talked about, obviously, it needs to be, I use the phrase baked in a lot when it comes to brand purpose, and you talk about this in the brewery and in the tap room and wherever else. So beyond the actual recruitment, of course, of people coming out of prison, how else does that manifest in a day-to-day kind of operations of the business?
So it varies. So we have lots of different guys coming out from prison. So to be clear, we only work with men at this point, and that's strictly a geographical thing. There are no open prisons in Oxfordshire that would allow people to come out to us on day release programs. So we would love to work with women, but we currently work with only men, strictly to geographic limitations. But it varies. I mean, I think, one of the things that I noticed really early on working with TAP was the personal touch that in particular Amy, Tess, and Paul put onto the business and the people that we work with. So, without getting into super specifics, we've had guys come out who are coming out of prison. They've been working with us and they would like to continue working with us, but they're coming out of prison in Oxfordshire and they are from Cornwall or the other side of they're somewhere other side of the country and they have nowhere to go. And so we will help with housing applications. We'll meet with landlords. I mean, it's not like everybody, but it's a specific situation, right? Well, we've helped fill out housing applications. We've given, advice. We've met with landlords. We've written recommendation letters. There's been other instances where, we go into, so all of our open positions, all of our vacancies are posted not just publicly on something like Indeed, but also in prison boards. And so we come in and do job fairs. We'll do an interviewing process. Someone may not get the job, but we do give interview feedback. We'll give CV feedback. We'll say, look, we're not going to be able to offer you the position, but here's maybe a couple of things to think about for your next interview. Here's some things that you can improve on your CV. And so I think it's not just a strictly hiring process, but it's also helping people move on. It's not like they have to continue working with us. And if they don't work with us, we're not going to help them. We do. And I think there's been a lot of post-TAP social employment support that is ongoing. And I've seen there's a couple guys who are still in touch. They've not been working with us for a year, 2 years. And they still need some help once in a while. And we're always happy to give it as much as we can. We also do smaller things, but we support our programs in the prisons. And there's little things that we do as a company that may not be things we talk about in our marketing or in our branding, but that we do that are just, again, it's not even an obligation. It's something that you're happy to do, because it's one thing to employ people, right? And to give them a job and to feel good about that part. It's another thing to do something that kind of drives that home, that personal touch home. It's not like we're so removed from people once we hire them. It's just that when you can give that extra touch, it just, you feel like, wow, it's like this reminder that you're really making an impact, not just in your business or in the community, but in individual people's lives. And for me, that's been a very rewarding thing, is to work really closely with people and to understand the challenges they might have for various reasons, and to help them even get over a couple of those. That's a cool thing, and it's something I'm really kind of happy to be part of.
I suppose it's a good takeaway for anyone listening from a purpose-driven brewing perspective, because you've got this wider perspective on what the purpose means. Like you say, it's not just like, okay, yeah, we're going to help people day release and that's it. But it's like, no, if you look at the bigger picture, what does that mean beyond the beer, which makes it a truer purpose already. From an internal culture, like a business culture itself, I remember you saying, like, not always do you know who is coming in from day release or where these people are coming from. So has that done anything to the workplace culture in terms of like how people interact with each other? Do you go through coaching or anything which actually makes it a better workplace to be part of?
I keep saying it's a really good question. There's all good questions, Tim.
Dude, I'll take it.
Um,
Please continue to stroke my ego with how good my questions are.
um, as you say, so when someone comes to work with us, there is not a company alert that, okay, so and so is coming to us from prison. Be gentle or be whatever. I think that, you know, what I've noticed in the 4 years that I've been here is our co-founders have a very good sense in terms of hiring for any position and they're very conscious of hiring people that they feel are not just super qualified, but also are in line with our kind of general outlook on life, our kind of approach to our values and our mission. And so this might not be a great answer, but I think that there is no coaching. We don't have this is how you'd speak to X person or Y person. I think it's just, are you a good person? Is your personality in line with ours? And I think if it is, then you're probably someone who's comfortable being around lots of different people, whether they're from prison or not. You're comfortable being around people from different backgrounds, people from different beliefs. And I think that it really, it's not to say there's not conflict. There's conflict like in any business, in any work environment. But I don't think it's conflict that arises from the fact that we work with people from prison, or the people from prison are standing next to you or calling you or whatever it might be. And so no, I generally have no clue when I walk into our bakery proof or I walk into the tap room whether or not someone is coming from a prison side or not. And I like that. In fact, I drove down to a festival we did in London with a guy who I had never had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with, just because we don't work in the same department. And it came out that he was from prison. I had no idea. And, he kind of laughed. He's like, yeah, man, like, whatever. And we had a great conversation. And man, that was probably the highlight of my month, was just have this talk with him about what his experience was and why it's, is what it is, and what his concerns are. What are the things that he's kind of dealing with? Like, I found that I don't want to make this about me, I'm not, but I found that personally enriching to hear that, and to know that, wow, like, he really needs some help, and we're really actually helping him, and he's, whether he stays with us for another week or a month or 2 years, like, he's going to get back on his feet probably. He has the resources to do that. And so that's a long-winded response to your question, but yeah.
But to kind of condense it down, to me, it sounds like a lot like, because you don't have that training, but you recruit based on values almost, right? What are these shared commonalities that we look for from people wherever they are? And
Yeah.
I've talked to many breweries about it, that can help so much with internal culture. Like, if you're all believing in the same things, if you're the same kind of, system that you develop from, then everything else it gels so much better. So I love that as a directional kind of.
And that's true of any company, right? You want to hire good people, but I think when there's another layer to working for us, whoever us might be, I think it's very important that value screening is done at a very high level.
Okay, let's circle back to virtual signaling. I've said we were going to, because I can see it, in your position with marketing as well. It must be such a tricky tightrope, because you've got this big old flag. Yeah, we got this purpose. Check us out. We're doing good in the world, which I said incredibly patronizingly, and I didn't mean to, but you could just ride that horse until it comes home. But people are going to be like, oh, God, we get it. Yeah, you employ the people from the prison. Like, how do you strike the balance, man, without kind of battering people over the head with it?
That's a good question, Tim. Rinse and repeat. Sorry. It is, though. And someone who's in a marketing role and kind of leading a good chunk of our kind of public perception and our public messaging. That's something that I think about every day. I think, so one of the things that we say, not in our kind of like tagline or branding or anything like that, is that, we do what we do, but we like to have a good time doing it. And so while, to go back to my earlier comment about how you have to weave your purpose and your mission to everything you do, that doesn't have to be the whole message, right? And so I think that, if you do like a vibe check of Tap Social, and you went into for example, our Instagram, you're going to see some things about our mission. You're going to see stats that are troubling about the UK's criminal justice system and reoffending rates and those kind of things. But you're also going to see, hopefully, some kind of lighthearted things that show the personality behind the people who are making it happen, right? And so, you can't just do, as you say, post after post after post, or press release after press release about the mission. There has to be other things to that, because again, it becomes this thing where you're starting to lose the plot, or you're losing the attention that you've already grabbed. And so it's a balance. It's a balance between, and this is with any company, but I mean, for us, it's a balance between getting our social mission message out there, which is extremely important because it's everything that we do. It's about, then there's also, here's our products, here's the events that we do, here's the people who are making it happen. And so I think that it's just striking that right balance without overdoing it. One of the things that I think is effective for us in terms of getting that message out without, as you say, battering people over the head with it is our beer cans, right? And so I have one here by chance. So all of our labels on our beer cans feature art created for us from somebody from prison. So HMP Huntercombe. And there's a little line on the can that says that, but it's not like this is created. It's not like big in front and center, right? And then the beer name. So all of our core beers, of which there are now 8, every name, the beer industry has a well-earned reputation for these crazy and inventive and esoteric beer names. And Christ, after thousands and thousands and thousands of beers, and people are still coming up with great names, like we deserve that reputation, right? But our core beers, they all have a name that either directly or obliquely ties into our mission. So, for example, Time Better Spent is our best-selling beer. It's an IPA. And the name Time Better Spent references the fact that a third of prisoners in the UK, and this is a troubling statistic, a third of prisoners in the UK spend up to 22 hours a day in their cell, just sitting there, not just not doing anything really. And so as you go on to the stat, which is on our can, you learn that reoffending rates are high 1 year after prison, and reoffending rates are high and unemployment rates are high. No surprise, because people have spent the last however many years just sitting in the cell not doing anything. And so we think that time is better spent in day release programs and employment to get people back on their feet. So again, it's you pick up a can of beer, you pour it, maybe you look at it for 5-10 seconds before you crunch it or toss it, whatever it might be. But if you can capture someone's interest or capture their interest in those 5 to 10 seconds, and to make them maybe scan that QR code or whatever it is and to learn more, then you were successful, I think.
Yo, I just want to take a second out of Branding for Breweries to make you aware of something. For those of you who don't know, outside of hosting Branding for Breweries, writing the book Branding for Breweries, I also provide independent breweries with hands-on support with their branding, design, and marketing. In fact, it's even better than that, because it's not just me, it's a whole bunch of awesome independent brewery folks who are dedicated to doing the very best for each and every independent brewery. The team have worked with some incredible breweries like Northern Monk, Ossett, Brains, Pillars, all over the globe, and gaining results like doubling revenue, winning Rebrand of the Year, even gaining over 7 million views on the TikTok channel. So if you're looking to level up your brewery's branding and marketing this year, drop us a message over at www.thebrandweavercollective.com, and a member of the team will get back to you and we can have a chat. Now, back to the show. I love that. And again, it goes back to what we're talking about, how that purpose kind of expands far beyond just the recruitment side of things. Like you say, it's the educational piece on the cans, the thought that goes into the names as well. Again, a very simple kind of mechanism that a lot of breweries can use. It's like, well, if you've got a purpose, then how do you communicate through your names? It's the educational piece I love. I remember seeing Left-Handed Giant, who of course, they're B Corp rated, they use the recycled paper texture, but there's those little things in there that again hint back towards it, but without the battering around the head, man. Yeah. And the artwork is very unique, but it's unique and it has a story. It's got a different angle to it as well. So big claps to you on that, bud. One thing I do wonder, again, when we talk about the social media and what you're posting out there, is what do you do when you come against what I would think is the inevitable, I'm not sure about Tap Social because they've got people from prison there. Like that the negative aspect of what could be associated with the purpose? How do you manage that?
It comes up often. Well, I wouldn't say often, but it does come up with some frequency. I give a lot of talks, and get a lot of questions about, well, do you hire people who have committed X crime? How do you reconcile having someone from prison in a, serving pints or whatever it might be? And I think that it's a conversation, right? I think that one of the things that I learned that I wasn't aware of before I started working with TAP is that most people who go to prison in the UK will be back out in the streets. Most people. And so do you want those people to, regardless of what mistake they made, and we've all made mistakes, right? I think most of us do not live a 100% virtuous life. And some of us have done things that are maybe slightly worse than others, or we've gotten caught or have not gotten caught. But do you want people who have to pay for that mistake for the rest of their lives, or do you want them to come out and be ready to get back on their feet and be adjusted people who can contribute to society again? So I think that when you start talking in those lines and along those angles, I think that you get it just opens up another way of thinking, another line of thinking, I guess. I had another point, I'm not forgetting it. But I think that I think just having conversations with people will often, more often than not, will help clear up any misgivings people might have. When we first launched, our first article about Tap Social was in the local newspaper, Oxford Mail, and there was a comment section, as there is, and online comments are always very well worded and fair. And there was one comment that called, it's these 20-something, Amy and Tessa Paul were all in their mid-20s or lower 20s. And they're opening this tap room in the middle of nowhere, West Oxford. And someone said, working with people from prison, no one's going to go there, bleeding heart, numbskulls. Sometimes you just embrace it. So we embraced it. They put out a series of sour beers, appropriately, called the Bleeding Heart Numbskulls. And every year when the anniversary of that article comes up, Tess always races and says, can I please get on the Instagram to recognize that, our Oxford Mail Day. So, you don't run away from it. I think that you just have a conversation with people, and more often than not, we're very lucky here in Oxford to have had a supportive community, and I think that by and large, people are kind of on board with what we do. Because again, to go back to what we said earlier, it's not something that's just bolted on. It's something that we've been talking about for the last 10 years, and we'll continue to talk about for the next 10 years, hopefully.
Yeah, I was going to raise that. Like, it does justify, like, if you feel very strongly about the purpose, then defending it would, I imagine, to be very, very easy at that point, because the subject inside and out. You feel very passionate about it, versus, like you say, the bolt-on where you're like, yeah, we're saving trees. Why? How?
Right. Yeah, it comes up so often, and again, it's not even necessarily people are skeptical, but they want to ask questions. And so when you answer those things and you live it and you see it and you're confident talking about it, and you feel confident about what you're doing, and you feel that what you're doing is the right thing, then yeah, I think it becomes a very, not easy thing, but something that you're very happy to answer and speak to.
There we go, everyone thinking about purpose-driven brewing. Make sure you know your topic inside out, because you will get caught out very, very quickly. Brian, let's move on to the sales side of things. You mentioned Tap's been going for a while now. You've got multiple tap rooms. Congratulations. It's an envious position that you find yourselves in, but you're, of course, getting your beer out into other venues that are not your own. So how does the purpose and the mission conversation work into that kind of dialogue between sales rep, bar owner, or whoever it might be? Do they lead with it? Is it a complementary aspect? How does it work?
I would say that we do lead with it. We've gotten our foot in the door. I'm not going to lie. I think that, and is that a bad thing that we've gotten our foot in the door because of who we are? I don't think so. It's tough out there. Just as well as I do. It is tough for indie breweries in the UK and really around the world right now. And so, I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying, look, how do you stand out from your peers, right? I mean, everyone has their thing that they have to be able to stand out, whether that's, look, all of our, hazies are rated 4.5 and up and untapped, which I think has increasingly less relevance, but which isn't to say I don't appreciate those beers or those breweries. But I think, what do you lead with? how do you get your foot in the door? And yes, we absolutely do get our foot in the door, because I think that with our mission, because it's not just that, you read lots of articles about how people are increasingly concerned, and rightfully so, about where their hard-earned and limited money goes, right? With given the kind of corporate takeover of the world, I think people are very conscious of that, increasingly so, and it's great to see. But I think it's not just consumers that care, but it's also people in trade, people who stock beer. The product has to be good, of course, but in terms of getting your sales message and making your pitch, we it does very much start with who we are and what we do, and then the secondary stuff is the product and the pricing. I mean, let's be honest with you. It's like you can start the conversation with who you are, but to continue that conversation and to have results from that conversation, the product, it's the second thing that people will ask. Okay, oh wow, that's really cool. You guys do this. Oh, that's so great. What kind of beer do you have? How good is it? Can we get some samples? This is standard practice for every brewery. And then it's pricing. And we try to price as competitively as we can, without going to the specifics of pricing. But it it has to, all those things have to align, right? And that's, again, one of the things that make it so difficult, because independent breweries do not have the luxury of economies of scale, right? So we brew small batches, and when I say small, that applies to some of the bigger independents, right down to this kind of smaller ones like us. But we cannot produce on the volume of the major producers, and so we cannot often meet that price point, that cheap price point, essentially, that those big ones can meet. And so you need to have things that give that value that you can't necessarily provide in freebies or discounts. And I think that for us, the value of supporting a mission, giving back, supporting a company that gives back to its communities, does help our sales. Absolutely.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, if I were a bar operator and being like, okay, I'm doing good by stocking this. I get to tell people that I've done my little bit for society and for community, by association. So I get that. And what about bringing people into the tap room? Does it have a draw from general consumers who might not be the biggest of beer fans, but they're like, oh yeah, we're going to go to tap because we want to help, we want to support?
Absolutely, 100%. We once in a while we'll put up something. So, for example, recently for last week, we were spotlighting Amy and Tess as part of International Women's Day, and some of our kind of marketing communications, we're just talking about the things that we've accomplished that we're proud of. And again, it's not, these are things, the actual things we've done. It's not a virtue signal. And a lot of the comments that we would get on that post was, "We love what you do." Not like, "Oh, I love your beer." There was some of those too. But it's like, we love what you do. We love the impact you have in the community. We love how much you connect with Oxfordshire and beyond. And so I think that, yeah, I mean, I think, our demographic is not so we make very modern beer, but we are not on the, if you look at like a point of the pointy end of independent beer, of term being super kind of esoteric beer, we're not on that pointy end. We're kind of somewhere in the middle, I would say. It's not our market. Our market is people who like to go out, like to have a drink, and we have a good beer. They support independent beer, but it's not a super kind of traditional crafty kind of beer geek person. We have those too, but it's not our core audience. And so when we're planning events, I think I think one of the last podcasts you posted with Megan, where she's talking about events and which ones are successful in breweries. If you take out the beer, what are you left with, right? Mm-hmm. So if you took out the beer from this tap room, you would be left with a true community space, and I say that with 100% confidence behind that statement, a true community space that is welcoming and hosts all kinds of things that you do not have to give two fucks about beer to enjoy. So tonight, we have a clay making session. It's sold out, 25 people, but it's sold out at it's not cheap. It sells out. We have a event throughout the year. We have Kaylee's in this tap room, and we don't make, I'll just be honest, we don't make a lot of money on those events, because the people who come to those Kaylee's are coming to dance. They're not really coming to drink. That's fine. This is a space that, people can come to, and we have all kinds of events like those going on all the time that are not beer focused. We have some beer focused events, but most of them we don't rely on tap takeovers, things like that. We rely on appealing to a very wide range of people, from drinkers to non-drinkers.
And I can see, I mean, there's so many benefits to having a purpose that you feel very passionately about, and it is, like I mentioned before, baked into it. I suppose if you had to give advice to breweries out there, maybe they're starting from scratch. Maybe they are like, we do care passionately about insert reason X here. What would the first steps be in your mind to then bringing that to life and making it work in a similar way to what Tap have done?
It's a big one. I mean, you of course are going to have to decide if you're starting literally from scratch, like you're going to open next month or whatever it might be. There's the kind of business structure things that are a big consideration. So we are a social enterprise. Social enterprises are businesses that do good and give back to society, and to simplify it a little bit. But we're still for profit. So we are a for-profit business, but we reinvest in ourselves and reinvest in our mission. There's other, are you going to be a charity? Are you going to be a social enterprise? Are you going to be a LLC? Whatever it might be, you have to make that's kind of a big decision, frankly, and one that's maybe slightly under the radar, because that decision you make will kind of lay out how you need to structure your business, and how you need to look about the products that you make, and the pricing and all those kinds of things. So once you've decided that, if you want to be a purpose-driven business, you need, again, to go back to the first thing we said, it should be everything that you're all about. It should be you should really have that hashed out ahead of time, and not just bolted on, as you said. And I don't know if I'm being repetitive, but if it's not, again, though, you have to be able to pass the sniff test of the people that you're trying to reach. If you're just going to come out and say, we are, again, we're an environmental company, we're a sustainable company. Okay, that's great. That's good. But what does that mean? What does that mean in real terms? And so you should be able to be ready to talk about those things confidently, not just that we're for this cause, but how are we helping to further that cause? What are the specific steps that we're taking? How is that relevant to you? How is that relevant to our business and the things that we make, things that we sell? And if you can tick all those boxes, I think then it becomes much easier to lay out all the myriad other things that you need to do to be a successful company. And so I think that, man, just make sure you've thought it through. that's the very short-winded answer, but make sure you've thought it through and that you're ready to live that in every day, basically, of your business. I mean, it doesn't have to be, to go back to what I said earlier, it doesn't have to be everything that you do doesn't have to be about that mission. Everything you say doesn't have to be about the mission, but there needs to be an underlying proof in the pudding, essentially, that you're actually really well behind it. And it's not just something, again, do good, do good in your community. But if you want to make it really the core of your business, then it has to be another layer that goes beyond that.
Tremendous, Bud. And there's a couple of people on Instagram. Someone just likes Kaylee's, so that's fantastic. They've popped their head up and said hi.
Great.
Yeah, she references Big Hug as well. They stepped out with a clear message. They've done really well. Another purpose-driven brewery. Brian, if people want to know a little bit more about Tap Social Movement, where can we direct them to obviously find out, see the purpose in action, I suppose, right? And of course, if people wanted to get in touch with you, buddy, and ask you questions about it, where can we direct them?
We do have a website.
Good stuff.
Shocker. Yeah, it's tapsocialmovement.com. We are on Instagram, and again, Tap Social Movement. You can always get in touch with us through our website. We have an info@tapsocialmovement.com. We get a lot of queries from other businesses who have looked at actually working with people from prison, and that's our whole goal, right? Our whole goal. We're still a small company. We're growing. We're very fortunate to be in a position of growth right now, but we are still a small company making a small impact in the greater scheme. It's a big issue, the prison system and the criminal justice system. And so ultimately, we want more businesses to see that what we do works and to ask us, how did you make that work? And we do get some of those queries. And so if you're a business out there that's thinking about working with people from prison or something like that, you can always get in touch with us through our website. We have events in this tap room every weekend from Thursday to Saturday. Sometimes during the week, we had a jazz night last night. We have our market tap bar in the covered market downtown in Oxford. We have our bakery, which is Proof Social Bakehouse in Kennington in South Oxford. And we are opening a new venue, our first purpose-built venue, which is both exciting and terrifying, in June-ish. It's in Milton Park in Abington, and that's going to be a very exciting site, kind of bringing all of our kind of various things of baking and brewing into under one roof. So I'm really excited about that. But we also have our summer festival coming up, which is Changes Brewing on June 6th, and that's a great place, great way to see what we're all about in terms of our community connections and that kind of thing.
I'm definitely going to try and get to that one. That's for sure, man.
I hope so.
Many places to experience it, the Tap Social movement, to read about it, bud. Brian, thank you so much for your time today. This conversation I've found fascinating. It's wonderful to see how much that purpose bleeds into every corner of what you guys and girls are doing. So a massive round of applause, and thank you for joining me, bud. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim. That means a lot, man. It's been great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And everyone who's taken the time to tune in. I cannot do it without you, of course. Well, I could, but I would just be talking into the void and it would be pointless. So if you've been listening today, as always, you rock. If you're listening in the future, this is Tim from the past talking to you in the future. Yes, I am time traveling right now. It's mad, but I appreciate you guys and girls as well. You're all amazing. I'll be back soon with another fantastic guest. Rock on. That's a wrap on this week's episode of Branding for Breweries. If you got something great from it, hit follow, like, and subscribe on your favorite streaming app. Or even better, leave a review, share it with your brewery pals, or get in touch, because I want to chat to you. Rock on!